Welcome to Yelling Into the Void, a podcast discussing and exploring topics in World of Warcraft. I'm Tevin. I'm joined by Scott as always. And Scott, there's a big announcement that Blizzard made. They're removing add-ons.
Yeah, they're gone. Starting tomorrow.
Yeah, they're just gone.
Yeah, they just delete them in the latest weekly maintenance. They're just gone. And good luck, everyone.
Well, the joke here is they're gone eventually. They're not actually gone tomorrow. But Blizzard has said that they're working to in-house a bunch of add-ons, which is kind of going to be our main topic for today.
Yeah, big news for sure.
That will replace add-ons. I believe Ian explicitly said once they have theirs in place, it should replace add-ons.
I mean, so they've been very clear that all the the cosmetic, how your screen looks, that kind of stuff, they will never take those add-ons away. I think the focus of the conversation and that we'll get into is stuff that is reading the combat log and is able to respond instantaneously and process information instantaneously while in combat and encounters and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, as stated earlier, one of the main things that we want to talk about today, and probably the main thing we want to talk about today, is going to be add-ons that are being in-housed by Blizzard, in-house developed, and it's, I don't know, there's a lot of thoughts around this. There's a lot of negative thoughts around this, and there is one thing specifically that I think people are freaking out about, and it's this one-button rotation stuff. We'll get to that, but I really want to quell some of the hatred around this, because I think people are just thinking of this the entirely wrong way.
Yeah. Everybody's losing their minds, as per usual in the community, that they're all freaking out about nothing. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So we'll cover that one. And then the last thing, if we have time permitting, that I want to talk about, Scott, is kind of a late season philosophy and kind of how people interact with the late season differently, and what things tend to always happen, and kind of how to maybe avoid some of the late season burnout and stuff that happens for people. So that's time permitting. We'll see how much time we have left after we deep dive in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, we said last week that we had all these plans on what to do over the next coming weeks, and then the Blizzard dropped all of the news in between our last recording time and now. Tons of things that they talked about. So yeah, they're making our job hard, but also easy at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I like when there's news, because when it's 4 weeks of nothing, it's kind of hard to come up with a thing to talk about.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
There are a couple of things that we need to clarify from our episode last week, as well as some additional information that's come out about dinars. So first things first, with our episode last week, we mistakenly said that all of these changes, like the turbo boost stuff, is going to be 11.17. That's not necessarily accurate. It's actually not accurate at all, but I mean, let's be honest, I don't know. They're not going to be separated by an amount of time that's going to be significant enough that it's going to actually matter. So it is what it is, but I did want to clarify and at least eat crow for something that we were definitely wrong on stating.
Yeah, I mean, we don't actually have a release date for 11.17 quite yet. Sometime in the next 2 months sometime. But yeah, this week we got kind of our first preview of what that patch is actually going to be. And yeah, it made it very clear that this turbo boost stuff that's starting a week from tomorrow, I think.
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Is not related to the patch at all. It's just something they're doing kind of independent of any formal numbered patch.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we need to address is there was a change with how dinars, puzzling cartel chips, whatever you want to call them, are obtained, in which you can obtain them for Mythic Plus now.
We won. We did it. We won.
But
sort of.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of nuance to that. And I don't know, do you want to go into the details on that, Scott?
Yeah, so they changed multiple things. The first one was that, it used to be you had to kill 4 bosses in order to get one chip every week. Now they have made it where you only have to do 4 Mythic Plus dungeons or 4 bosses in raid to get your chip. So those Mythic Plus players, you can just do your dungeons and you will get the currency. The other thing they changed is that they added myth track trinkets. Well, I guess they added dungeon trinkets as a whole to the things you can buy with the Puzzling Cartel chips, the dinars. So now there is some bad luck protection in the world of Mythic Plus dungeons. It is just trinkets, so if you're hoping for anything else, tough. But they did add those, and they did add the ability to get them in Myth Track, and the unlock for that is you have to have timed all keys on a 12 difficulty, which I think is fair. I think is a fair compromise between what they originally imagined the system and kind of what the public was clamoring for when it was originally announced. I like it, except like the problem is obviously like the trinkets, the Myth Track trinkets that I will then have access to are the dungeon ones. I still will not have access to any of the Mythic Raid ones, and those are the best trinkets for me, like by a large margin. Like I got the Priory trinket in my vault last week for Myth Track, and I took it because it's a really good trinket. But I'm pretty sure the way it shakes out, I'm pretty sure Mug Jug on Heroic is still better for me than a Myth Track Priory trinket. So it's just like,
right.
I like just the way trinkets are balanced. I still really, really would want those Mythic Track ones. So I mean, it's not a perfect, like obviously we didn't get everything we want, and that's okay. They have a vision for what they want this thing to be, and I appreciated their ability to look at it and say, hey, we really should throw some sort of a bone to Mythic Plus players that don't really want to raid.
I agree. I do have one gripe with this system, and that to get hero track trinkets from the raid, you have to have killed the boss at which they come from on Heroic. To get Mythic Track trinkets from the raid, you have to have killed the boss that they come from on Mythic. To get Myth Track items from dungeons, you have to do 2 key levels higher than the level at which you would have to do to get the item, which is, I don't know, that seems a little backwards to me, because like everything else is you do the content at which it would reward you that, and then you can buy that content. So I'm personally not that shook about it being a 12, but I could see an argument to be made there that why is it different for Mythic Plus?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I think it's a neat, like, just line to draw. Like they've drawn this very specific line at 12s. That's when the Resilient Keystones start. That's when the affix change happens. That just seems like this is the demarcation point we want. That you know, I know 10s have been the demarcation point for portals and for Vault for a long time, but it seems like they're pushing more and more to that 12 breakpoint, which I wonder if they're ever going to do something with Vault in that regard, you know, like, because back in the day it was 15s that were the max Vault, right? And then in Dragonflight they upped it to 20, which became 10 in the War Within, and that's the way it's been. And I do wonder if they're like, oh, maybe we can like push 2 more levels in Vault. I feel like people will lose their minds over that. What if like all 10s in your Vault is the same, but like all 12s in your Vault gave you some sort of weekly bad luck protection where you get like, for if you time 8 12s that week, not only do you unlock those Myth Track Vault spots, but you get to like a reroll button or something. I don't know.
That would be cool. I could also see them just saying, okay, here, you've timed keys on a 15. Here's a 3 out of 6 myth keys instead.
maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that they kind of look back at it and rethought and replanned what they wanted this to be. It is still not perfect in my mind, and that's okay. I mean, I think we have to look at this like I was listening to a lot of WoW podcasts last week talking about all the stuff that happened over the last week, and one comparison that I thought was really apt from I think it was the Pod EC was, we have to look at this like we look at the Catalyst when the Catalyst was first introduced, because when the Catalyst was first introduced, it sucked. It took way too long for it to unlock. The getting the currency in order to use it was not fun and a pain in the ass. And since then, they've iterated on it, and now the catalyst is in a place where in season 2, I think it's pretty good, actually. And so if we look at this dinar system as the catalyst, well, now it's introduced. They're most conservative when they introduce something, and then they see how it goes, and hopefully it'll improve from there. So I am optimistic. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Again, my stance on this is not going to change. No matter what, we're in a better spot than we were before. And while there's critiques and things that I wish would change about it, the only way to make them change is to raise them. And that's what we're doing. But that being said, we're in a better spot than we were before. So it's not like I can say, what the fuck, this is the stupidest idea you've ever had. Why would you do this? Because it's not. It's better. It's better than we had.
Yep, it is. It is indeed.
To get to the meat and potatoes of the show, though, Scott, because we have a lot to cover, let's talk about add-ons.
Hot button issue. Can we get through this entire episode without saying the word Asmongold? Fuck! We did it.
There are 2 add-ons that Blizzard has already developed in-house that people are using today that I think people are forgetting about. And that is when they did the UI overhaul and allowed you to move everything around, that was not standard Blizzard procedure before then.
That's
so
true. That's true.
That essentially brought in an add-on. If anybody's familiar with Bartender, it essentially brought Bartender into base game WoW, which is great. But I think it's something that a lot of people forget about, along with the bag add-on. There used to be an add-on called Bagnon, and essentially that is what they replicated with the like one giant bag toggleable option in the options. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think we're going to talk a lot about this one button rotation. We're going to talk a lot about the rotation helper, which are the 2 they've kind of decided to launch first with this new outlook on add-ons that they have. Although to your point, not entirely new. But I think it's fun to talk about this philosophically, because essentially, as we talked about in the introduction, what they're saying here is we think that the level of add-ons that exist in the game that parse combat and help you solve combat have gotten out of hand, and we need to rein them in. However, they are smart enough to realize that if they turn all that stuff off today and just say no more, people are going to lose their minds. And so before they lock the APIs and control much more tightly what an add-on API can and can't see, they are going to introduce copies, essentially, Blizzard versions of the most popular add-ons that exist today. I think the ones that in the interview Ian said specifically were a parser like Details, that like is the most downloaded add-on that like everyone who plays this game has, and like a boss mods tracker, like a Bigwigs or a DBM type tracker. Those are, I think, the 2 big ones that they said they want to introduce eventually, and that will allow them to kind of do something weak, or like, remember when they did the private auras that didn't really work? Well, something sort of like that, but better. And it will allow them to be able to kind of redo how they design fights and just rein all this stuff in. And like, I just want to say at the top here, before we get into all the details of all of this stuff, I approve of this mindset. I approve of this philosophy. I think, it can only be better for the game to stop the arms race between weak aura developers and encounter designers that are making encounters more and more complicated, more and more requiring either an add-on or just an absurd amount of split-second communication, to the point where you feel like you cannot do some of these bosses without add-ons. And like, this is primarily a mythic rating problem, which, you and I don't really do, but I think it exists in the heroic level of rating as well, to a lesser extent, for sure. That I don't think we quite have the level of coordination required and the tightness of timings required in like a mythic fight, but it's still definitely there. And I just think it like, it allows for a lot more creativity in how they come up with problems for us to solve in fights. And I look forward to it. So I am philosophically behind everything they want to do here. I do have my reservations, and I'm sure we'll get into that on many levels. There is a way to do this very, very wrong.
Yeah.
And we'll see what they do.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me on this is I think a lot of people are going to start freaking out, but you really need to sit back and you need to ask yourself, like, is lowering the barrier to entry of this game actually a bad thing? I think the answer to that overwhelmingly is no.
Yeah.
Because right now, to like play the game and to play the game at a remotely competitive level, there are a lot of things that you need to figure out. There's third-party websites, there's third-party add-ons, there's so many things that you need to figure out. So I think lowering those bars is a good thing, and it's going to allow us to continue to get new players in the game as the older generation starts to fizzle out and can't continue to tell people what they need to be doing.
Starts to just say it starts to die. We're going to die one day. And then the game will need an influx of younger people that are not going to die.
Well, that's a dark way to look at it, but
look, I'm turning 40 this year, man. I'm just embracing my mortality in every way I possibly can.
So the first big add-on, though, that they introduced, Scott, is the cooldown manager. It's in the game today, and this, I think, is like the gold standard of what we need to look at as potential places to improve, because cooldown manager in and of itself is not a bad idea. It's essentially a replacement for whatever people normally install as like their primary class weak aura.
Yeah.
And that is good. That's cool. That's a good thing to have. The problem is, and the problem with a lot of things that Blizzard does, is they like to tell you how to use the thing instead of you customizing the thing how you want to use it.
Yeah.
And that is evident throughout this cooldown manager thing. Like, you can't tell it what to and what not to track. And it is a very weird way to go about it. And if they implement all of their add-ons in this way, and I'll say it probably 500 times during this episode, that is what is going to shoot them in the foot. Not allowing people to customize things is going to be the biggest thing that is going to shoot them in the foot in this endeavor.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Like the cooldown manager as it exists on launch, it's funny, we talked all about 11.1.5 last week, and then we forgot this small little tiny part of it because neither you or I use it, so we didn't think about it at all. It's a great idea, but yes, to your point, it doesn't allow you to choose what you do and do not care about in your tracking, which I think is a mandatory requirement for anything like this. And this is essentially the big, in my mind, problem is the add-ons exist in a marketplace where there are thousands of developers all developing their own version of a thing, right? Like there are tons of different weak aura packs for classes that are available out there. There are multiple different kinds of boss mods. There are multiple different kinds of like cooldown trackers, of damage meters, like all these things. There are multiple versions of them and have been multiple versions of them during the entire life of the game. And what that does is kind of allows the cream to rise to the crop. The ones that are the most flexible, the most responsive, and the best kind of float to the top. And you have this natural ecosystem in which if someone has a really good idea for an add-on that hasn't existed before, they can develop that. And if it's good enough, it will become popular. Mm-hmm. If you take that all away and just put one development team in charge of that, I'm not saying it necessarily is an inferior product, but there's the risk of it is not something that is workable for all peoples and has that customization and has gone through the vigors of kind of an open market selection process, essentially.
Yeah. They have a monopoly.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing is like, man, you turn off the ability for boss mods to exist, you better fucking make a great in-game boss mod like it better be awesome because
Hmm.
you're going to piss people off. Same thing with like people love details as a damage meter. Details has there were many damage meters when I played the game back before I quit. In Cataclysm, I used a different one. I don't even remember what the name of it is anymore. But when I came back, I was like, "What's a damage meter?" And like it's details, like everywhere. Everyone uses this thing now. You get rid of that functionality and you put a damage meter in the game, it better be good.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, they do have the advantage that they can look at that market and say, what do people like most about details? Why can't we just do that? And in fact, we actually have the ability to do it better. That's something they mentioned in the interview, that like details works in a like a proximity basis, right? Like it is able to detect and read combat things that are happening in your general area. But if you're doing a built into the game damage meter, it doesn't have that and any of that limitation. So you can just like, there's no weird thing where your teams are separated and so you're no longer getting accurate data on what everyone's DPS and healing is real time from details. That goes away. That doesn't exist anymore. And so like there are advantages to it being a home in-home grown solution, but yeah, there are definitely disadvantages too. So I think they're aware of this, and I think that's why they're not like announcing tomorrow wow parser is coming, because they're going to be very careful and deliberate about this kind of thing. But it is definitely them taking on a big risk and a job for sure.
Yeah. So while we talk about their potential implementation of a damage meter or parser or whatever you want to call it, I do think that there is something that we need to talk about that I didn't really think about until shortly before we started recording this. And that is, when they go to get rid of this, what are they going to do? Because currently it's just reading your combat log. And if they're getting rid of the combat log, then what does logging in like Warcraft logs look like now? And that is a little concerning to me.
Well, they kind of did this temporarily. Remember when there were those like overlays where like you could put like a map of the combat arena on your
Yeah.
screen and like real time track where everyone's location was and respond. Like they got rid of that by kind of doing this general delay of logging information. And
Mhm.
in my mind, I think that's what the long-term solution will be, that they will disable the ability to do like real-time tracking of that stuff, and like
True.
everything will be on a delay. So let's say you pull a boss, it's not the any kind of logging tool is not able to get any information until the combat has ended, until you wipe or kill the boss, and then it allows that to flow through the API and flows to the logs and print out. And that prevents all the kind of in combat real time calculating and configuring and responding. So that is probably, I'm not an expert of how any of this stuff works developmentally, by the way, but that seems like the easiest solution.
Well, I'm hopeful that it doesn't have an impact on logging as a general thing, because I think that that's another entirely different thing that they're going to have to tackle if they want to tackle that, which hopefully that's not really on the horizon, because that's going to be a big project for them.
Yeah, yeah.
But so I don't really know what else to say about a parser. I'm not too concerned about this one because, like, when you boil it down, everything that is being shown to us is data that we know that they already have.
Hmm.
And that's going to go for all of the information and all of the stuff that we have as add-ons nowadays. There are things that will make intelligent decisions based on Lua scripts that people have written, like weak auras,
Yep.
when to glow abilities, when to do this, when to show something. But that being said, all of this is developed on an API that is readily available. So it is replicable. And I'm not saying that they can't do it, but they need to think of every use case and not the use case that they want to think about. And so I think I'm going to hold on the boss mods for a second, because that is going to be like, that's going to be something key that I want to talk about, not only for us, but for like race to world first people and stuff like that. So I want to kind of jump over to the rotation helper side of things as a segue here. And that's the biggest thing that scares me with the rotation helper is I doubt this is going to pull from APLs like Hakili does. And in that, it means that it's just going to tell you how Blizzard wants you to play their class and not necessarily how to play the class the best way.
Yeah. So yeah, let's, in case people don't know, because I honestly didn't know until they started talking about this feature. I didn't know that Hakili was a thing. I'd never used it, so I didn't know anything about it because I'm not a DPS player and I don't care. Again, this is nothing that doesn't already exist out there through an add-on, right? So it's not like this is not like earth-shattering thing that's going to happen. I think it's a I'm so torn about how I feel about this thing because on the one hand I don't care. Like on the one hand I'm not going to use this, I just don't care.
Same.
On the other hand, I think it is true. It is just true that this game is very complicated. And especially from a DPS rotation perspective, there are so many modifiers on modifiers on modifiers to abilities that just pressing your abilities, you will not do very good damage. Pressing them in the correct sequence is the most important thing, and get it. And like that is part of the fun of playing a DPS class too, right? It is learning how to understand your rotation and get so good at it that you are able to min-max it and optimize it to the point where you can beat everyone else and do the most damage. And that's what you weird brain dead DPS players all love to do so much, which is great. I my problem with this as a solution is I don't think this will actually teach people how to play the class. And I think your point is very, very valid that they have, by doing this, they are also putting a lot of weight on their internal team to keep this constantly updated, right? That like how many freaking specs are there in this game now? And with the hero talents can sometimes change your gameplay in your individual spec pretty dramatically. And so you have signed up for a whole job, like maybe a whole full-time job just to keep this thing updated every patch for every situation, to keep it smart enough to actually be telling the correct thing, right? What is the best button to press in this situation? And I don't think it solves the problem of like teaching people how to do the rotations, because I agree. Like, I don't think a game should make you go to a third-party website to learn how to play the class. I think the game should teach you how to play it. And this game does not teach you how to play it. It does not. And so any solution out there that tries to help that experience, that tries to teach people how to play it, I will fully support. I don't think either of these solutions, the rotation helper or the one button rotation, actually make any kind of headway on teaching people how to play. And so it seems like, you know, the it's really hard and really time consuming to like teach people, like to develop a system in the game that actually legitimately teaches you how to play the class, how to do the rotation. This seems like a band-aid. It seems like a stopgap. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe you use this thing, and if you use it for like 2 weeks straight, you start to actually learn what buttons I should press in what situations. I don't think that's the case though, and that's why I'm like, I so divided on this. Where it didn't affect me. It doesn't do anything for me, but also I don't think it solves the core problem here either.
I agree. And there's multiple issues that I have with this. So again, like you, if this comes into the game tomorrow, I'm not going to be upset. I'm just not going to use it. But the main problem I have always had with Hakili is it pulls from the APLs. It knows what the best button to press is, but it's still wrong in a lot of cases. It still tells you to do things that aren't intuitive for the situation that you are being presented. So if you blindly follow that, you're still not learning. You're still not getting the decision making that you're going to need to make those decisions. The other problem with this is, how does this work with healers? How does this work with tanks? Does it tell you to use your defensives?
It doesn't.
Or does it just tell you to use them whenever.
So I've been listening to a lot of people that have been testing this on the PTR, and it just doesn't. All it does for you if you're a healer is guide you through your damage rotation.
Sure.
And the same thing with the one button rotation thing, by the way. I know we're not talking about that yet, but it's the same general principle. For healers, it's just your damage rotation. For tanks, it's your rotation, but none of your active mitigation. Like that,
Interesting.
like on either of them, that is something you still have to kind of know what to do yourself. And again, there is a constant tank and healer shortage in this game. And this will not solve that problem because it does not function for those people. It will not teach my most frustrating thing for healing, and I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. There is nothing in this game that teaches you how to heal. There's nothing. And the biggest problem with like dungeon healing, for example, is here's how it goes. You go difficulty by difficulty by difficulty, where you have to do nothing, a little bit more. Oh my God, everyone's dead. And it's like, it's such a switch to suddenly you matter, where we're in normal dungeons, in heroic dungeons, even in mythic zeros, even in low level keys, like there's just not enough damage to where what you're doing matters. And so it is not preparing you for the moment you step into a key where suddenly the healer role is paramount to everything that's going on, and there's no way to practice that until you get into that key. And this again does nothing for that. Same thing with tanking, and it's just sure, great idea, put this in, help people. Maybe it will help some people learn their spec, and if it helps one person learn their spec, I guess good job, but don't think it solves any actual problem.
Yeah. Well, the second problem that I have with Hikili, and I guess less of a problem with Hikili and more with this, is currently you have to go out of your way to seek a rotation helper, which means you are actively trying to learn something or actively trying to get better at something. If it's just put in the base game, and especially if it's enabled by default, then people are just going to blindly follow this, and they're not actually going to care about what is happening. They're just going to do what the game's telling them to do, and that's that. They're not going to figure out what's actually the best buttons to press. They're not going to learn how their abilities interact with each other and all of that. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's fine for the majority of the population who's doing world content. Like we've talked about it before. Not the majority of the population is doing super competitive content.
Yeah.
So like maybe this is all fine and I'm just being bah humbug about it because this isn't going to help. This is going to potentially make the content that I'm doing more complicated because you're going to have people who think that they know what they're doing not know what they're doing. Like I think paramount example to this, right? They have said that it will interact with the pull size that you're doing and it will switch to AoE if you need to. What happens when you do a pull and there is one mob that needs priority damage and you're a priority damage class like a fire mage and it suddenly tells you to start flame striking instead of pyroblasting the main target?
Yeah.
Like now you're in trouble because you're not doing the thing that you are brought to the dungeon to do.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely and always should be considered a stepping stone, a non-permanent solution, like while you are learning your class, here's a thing that can maybe help you do that. Again, we've talked about how much that's helping, how much you're actually learning. Importantly, like the person has to be willing to learn, right? Like that is a requirement in every teaching situation in the planet. Like the person has to be willing to learn something, and if the person is not willing to learn, you could put any system in front of them and it's not going to work. But there's nothing in there that like talks to you about the complications of what your role is and what your job is, and the nuances of when is the right moment to use that kind of stuff. And it definitely true. I guess my question general question for you, is the game too complex right now?
I personally don't necessarily think that it is. A lot of rotations boil down to being very simple. The problem is figuring out the things that you need to do that simple rotation require hours upon hours upon hours of theory crafting to figure out what is optimal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is where we get ourselves into a lot of trouble. I mean, great example of this is when we were in the beta for the War Within, and I even think a little bit on release, Destruction Warlocks were just not pressing Chaos Bolt. In single target, they were pressing Rain of Fire. And that is because people who theory craft and crunch all these numbers found out it is better for you to churn through your hero talent than it is for you to actually spend your single target spender and get the little bit of increased damage, because you get more damage churning through your hero talent. And so things like that shouldn't be so complicated. But once you figure it out and everybody's doing what they need to be doing, the rotation's easy. So I don't really know how to answer your question. I don't really feel like I did answer it, but the problem, I don't think, is in each individual class and how it plays, but more so figuring out the optimal way in which to do that. I think the theory crafting is the part that is like potentially in need of dire help.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right. I guess what I would say is, does it matter? Like, if the rotation helper is like 90% as effective or 80% as effective, like at what like obviously you're never going to be as effective as a person who just innately understands why I should press the next button when I press it. Because even with the rotation helper, there's a moment of reaction, right? Like if you're using the rotation helper, you press a button, you have to observe that another button lights up. You have to think, oh, I have to press that now, and you have to press it. Whereas a person who just innately understands their rotation, even if they're using a weak aura to have that button pop up, they just know. They just know they've got a tracker that says at 3 stacks of this is going to activate. I'm at 2 stacks. As soon as I hit this button, I need to hit this button. And they're just going to do it. And there's not going to be a delay there in anything. So they're just going to be more efficient. And that's fine. I think that's good, actually. Like, it should not be maximally efficient to use something that tells you what the next button to press is.
Yeah.
Again, I agree mostly that, like, first of all, like I don't play DPS, so like it's very difficult for me to sit back and like say anything about, do I think the game is too complicated? I don't know. Like, I think the healing game is challenging, but not necessarily in like a complexity kind of way. Although, you know, I think Mistweaver is a pretty complicated healer, and that like the way you play with the Master of Harmony build is requiring, there's a lot of healing amps built into your buttons, and you need to understand that innately and then track all that, and it gets pretty complicated. But like, I think this is also one of the problems with this, and maybe why they're going the route that they're going, because every change they make in this fucking game, there's going to be one person that's mad about it, because there's a lot of people that play this game that love exactly how complicated this game is, that love that like, there's a lot of DPS players that I think I would count you in one of those, is that like part of the fun of picking up a class and mastering it is learning the intricacies of the rotation, learning how all these things build off each other, and finding the ways to get those efficiencies and learn them and improve. And if you take that away from people, you hurt their core experience with the game. I think, not to once again harp on Final Fantasy 14, but like that game has been on kind of a mission from its inception to simplify some of the how combat rotations work. Like the big thing a few years ago, they redid the summoner class and took one of the most complicated class that required so much dot tracking and optimization and made it very, very simple. And the most outspoken members of that community are still mad about it. They are not happy about it. They feel like the game is too easy. It's been too dumbed down. It's too simple. It's not challenging enough. And so like, you do kind of feel for the developers in this game when they're like, on the one hand, maybe the game is too complicated, especially for the new user experience. And on the other hand, so many of our core players absolutely love the complication of DPS rotations and that stuff. So how do we solve this problem?
I will be completely honest with you. In the game's current iteration, you cannot take a Final Fantasy approach, because the way that Final Fantasy gets around this is they have like very few classes that are proc based, like actually proc based, not like, oh, you get a proc but you can kind of tell that the proc's coming. Like Dancer is proc based, and there's a couple of other procs that happen in the game. But when you think of a WoW class, right? Think of Fire Mage. Everything to do with that class is based on procs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like everything to do with a lot of classes is based on procs in this game. I think Mage is honestly the best example. All three of their specs are heavily influenced by the procs that they get. And that's just not something you see in Final Fantasy. And so you can't fix it in a Final Fantasy way. And I think if you take those intricacies out of the classes in WoW, you are left with something so incredibly bare bones
Mm-hmm.
that it is just not even going to feel rewarding to play in general. Like the thing that Final Fantasy has on WoW when it comes to simplified rotations is the fact that everything in that game is a, like far and away above the most like flashy thing you've ever seen. Like they can make something as simple as doing your rotation for a 2 minute straight window feel amazing because it looks cool and feels cool to press the buttons you're pressing. WoW just doesn't have that like flair to its animations, and I don't necessarily think it needs it because it has solved that problem in other ways in the proc-based reactionary gameplay. And so, and I think I need to clarify a little bit. The way that Hikili works currently is you have like your next 5 abilities are displayed on the screen. And as you get procs and things like that happen, it'll pop up different abilities and like juxtapose the things that you're seeing. So it's a little bit chaotic as it currently stands to read Hikili at some points for some classes. And I have witnessed people playing with it. So like I can see kind of where everything is, and it allows you to kind of remove some of the reactionary stuff from the reactionary based classes, but you still have to react. Like it isn't necessarily solving the problem. And I think to get back to your question on like how to solve this problem, I don't know. Like really what we need to do, like if you want to solve the problem is one, talents can never change ever. And you can't add new talents. Abilities can't ever change. Like the game has to stay the exact way it is now and never change ever. And then you also need to have a guide or something like that, either in the game that you can look at and you can read or on the Blizzard website. I think that's the only way that they can really get around this right now. And that is obviously not the right way to solve this. So I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a complicated situation, and they have decided that this is their solution. Maybe they've got more things planned after this, and this is just their first foray into it. Again, I don't think this is a huge deal. I think anything that helps new players at all, like, and yeah, I mean, I think to go back to I think a point you made earlier, the vast majority of people that play this game just run around the open world and do transmog farming and that kind of thing and don't care. And like, to be honest with you, like there's a certain level of attraction for this for me where like I'm playing with a group of friends and we have another healer on at that time. And I was like, oh, well, we have 2 healers already. It's like, well, I could go DPS, but I don't know this DPS spec at all. It sure would be nice if something tells me what the DPS spec is. And maybe even it sure would be nice if I could just press one button and it just does all my DPS for me.
Well, I think we do need to jump into the one button stuff because I think that is by far the biggest controversial topic, at least in our close-knit group. And I don't really know how to explain this. I think that this comes very clearly to me as somebody who works in software and is very, very aware of this in their day-to-day job, that this is not for anyone other than people with accessibility problems. And in doing that and allowing people to interface with this game and be able to play it when they have disabilities, I think is a good thing. I don't think that this is going to replace people actually doing their rotations. I think that the drawback to it is going to be way too high. I can see the argument for somebody running around world content using it, but like, who fucking cares? Yeah, people really need to stop looking at this as a replacement to playing the game, and it's just like a cheat code to playing the game, and really start looking at it as an accessibility feature that is going to allow people who have bad mobility in their hands or are disabled in some other way to actually be able to play and enjoy the game we all love so much.
I think you are 100% correct, and I fully support this, and I fully support any accessibility options that are added to this game. I will say there is a percentage of WoW player that is not a person with disabilities, that is just a person who plays this game, that will 100% do more damage under the one button rotation than they will without the one button rotation, right? Like there is definitely a percentage. Now, how big that percentage is, I think, is the determining factor here. Is it only 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Like the one of the biggest things, and I heard this on another podcast, so I'm repeating, it's not my original thought, but like one of the biggest problems that a lot of new players and frankly not good players have is the concept of always be casting, right? And like if you look at the logs, if you look at the tape of people playing, you will just see people dropping globals constantly. They're just not pressing enough buttons quickly enough, often enough. And this will solve that, right? Like if you give that person this and they just press 1 and all they have to do is just press 1, they might not miss a global. And yes, there will be a penalty. I think it's like I don't remember how much. I think it was going to be like a 0.2 second additional, but I think they actually increased it from the interview to when it went live on the PTR. But like there absolutely will be a group of people that play this game right now that will be much better at the game with this one button rotation. And again, as a healer player that doesn't care about DPS, under the scenario that we just talked about, where there's 5 of us on right now, we want to do a dungeon, but oops, 2 of us are healers. Scott, can you go DPS? Sure, but I don't know the spec at all. It's just turn on the one button rotation and just, will I be top damage? No, certainly not. Will it be enough, right? Like that is the question. Like I one of the things I kind of want to see in like a test environment is like get a group of 5 people together with decent gear and go into a 10. And is the one button rotation enough DPS to time a 10? And I kind of think it probably will be. Like I do. And I'm not saying this to say any of this is bad. I don't think it's bad. It's just very interesting. It just is very interesting because there is going to be a subset of people that maybe, like I just wonder the psychology of a person who is struggling with this game, is struggling with their DPS rotation, and then is told, "Hey, you can just do this," and they turn it on, and their DPS goes up, right? Is that person incentivized to get better? Is that person is like, oh, okay. Do you look at what the one button rotation does and learn from it? No, don't. So like from an accessibility perspective, 100%, great addition. Anything that helps people, again, let me reiterate myself, anything that helps people that are disabled in one way or another, have access to this wonderful game, I fully support. I do not think if anyone looks at this as a thing solving any kind of problem beyond that, I don't think it is a problem solver. I think it is a band-aid solution. Like there are definitely going to be people that just say sweet, and they're going to run keys forever with this on. Yep. I also think it's interesting, like, I feel like certain classes will work better for this than others. Like, if you're like a very high, like, haste class, like, that, like, really, really likes haste, I feel like this is not going to be good for you at all. But if you're not a class that really, really likes haste, it might be better for you. So
it could also be something with casters, too. Like, if you are a class that casts a lot, you get around globals.
Yeah,
so
true.
It might be better for casters too.
That's true. I mean, I watched a video of Towley like hopping on an elemental shaman on the PTR, setting up his one button rotation and just going to town. and he'd never played an elemental shaman before, had no idea what any of the buttons do, and again, didn't learn anything. He did not learn any of the buttons or how to play the class, but he got to sit at a dummy and like watch numbers go big. And like, is that a bad thing? And like, I don't think, ultimately, like, I don't think so, because as long as there's not a situation that exists that like the game just becomes everyone smashing one button because it's the easiest way to do maximal damage, and we just like, I don't want that situation to exist. I also don't want a situation to exist where like you have someone in your raid group that's struggling, and you're just like, hey man, just flip on your one button rotation for this boss and focus on the mechanics. And my concern is that I could see those eventualities. Like I can see that happening.
It's definitely going to become a new insult.
Yeah.
But
it's like when I got insulted about being a healer, it was go read a guide, and now it'll be flip your one button rotation on.
So the other thing that I want to say is this will almost likely never, ever, 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 ever be used in high level play.
No, never.
Because it isn't going to do your defensives for you.
Yeah.
And those are paramount in doing high level content. And so like this just isn't going to work.
I don't even think it does all your offensive cooldowns either. I think it's, you still, like, from a tank perspective, all it does is your damage rotation for sure. It doesn't do any of your defensives. From a healer perspective, again, it just does your damage rotation as a healer. It doesn't do any of your healing. And yeah, like, I think what I saw was in some DPS, it'll do like not their big cooldown, but like some of their smaller cooldowns, it'll do those, but it won't do your big offensive cooldowns either. So you're still going to have to remember to press those buttons.
Gotcha. Well, I don't really have a lot else to say about this. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when it comes out ultimately.
Yeah.
But again, I do think that people need to like reframe their mindset on how they're thinking about this and realize that this is something that is allowing people who cannot currently play the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, this is definitely like, it's very easy to look at this and the reaction be like, LOL, look at this dumb baby game for babies. They just want, everyone just wants the game to be super easy and just hand us stuff, yada, yada, yada. It does, like, there is part of me that wonders if we're having this conversation about complexity and the reason why they're even looking at stuff like this is the popularity of Classic WoW and how popular that game continues to be. And let's be honest here, there's not a one button rotation in Classic WoW, but there kind of is for a lot of classes in that game. It's not that you press one button, it cycles through your rotation. It's just that the one button is your rotation. And a lot of people really like that game, right? There's a like, and I think it's because the fun of that game is not necessarily the complexity of combat. It's not. And WoW has moved towards complexity of combat over the years. And I like that. You like that. That's not a bad thing. But there was something lost in that. And I wonder if they're just trying to figure out, is there a way to strike a balance between where we are right now and where we came from? And
yeah,
I don't think these are going to do that. I don't think so. I think it's going to take a lot more than just adding a rotation helper or one button rotation to do that.
I think that in any way that they try to solve this, if they try to at all preserve the way that the game is currently, you're going to split your player base, and it's going to just cause like the people who want things to be more complex. If the simpler way to do it is the better way to do it, then they're going to be pissed off. And the people who want things to be simple think that they're missing out on something by not doing the more complex way, then I could see arguments for them being pissed off. So I think that in no way are they going to end up winning on this.
Yeah.
And I really hope that somehow people who get paid money to think about these things more so than I do will hopefully come to a better conclusion than I can, and I'll be pleasantly surprised. But I'm going to stay on the fence about these until I see how they actually impact my experience within the game. And until they make my experience worse, I'm not going to be too overly negative about it.
Yeah, I think that's the right mindset. I do think it is interesting that in this quest to take the most popular add-ons and bring them into the game and then curtail the strength of add-ons, that these are the ones they started with. That this is like the first big one that they're like, this is our new mindset. We're going to announce this new mindset with this add-on. It's surprising to me, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe it's just because with the rotation helper stuff, they're already kind of trying to go towards this like pushing you to the right buttons to press. I mean, look at the Paladin rework. Like,
Yeah.
it's literally like whack-a-mole, the glowing button.
Yeah, the game
And
already does that, right? The game already glows
Yeah.
buttons all the time, like in base UI when you stuff procs, right? So we're kind of already halfway there for sure.
Yeah. So I wonder if it's just because they kind of already have the foundation for a lot of this, and then they can just build off of that, that they are starting with this. And boss mods is going to have to be like completely built from the ground up,
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
No, I
Which
think you're probably right. Yeah.
we have to talk about it. We're already going long on time on this, but we have to talk about boss mods. This is the one thing that is the most interesting to me, and we don't have a ton of information about it, but there are multiple avenues in which boss mods are developed in this game. Like, we have cooldown trackers, we have cooldown reminders, we have bigwigs, we have DBM, we have a ton of other plethora of things like weak auras and everything else that all culminate into the package at which you go to attack a boss. And the problem that I think we are going to see with this is either they are going to remove so much of the information that we currently can gain, and then they are going to dumb down encounters too much that it's going to feel like we took this like massive step back in complexity of bosses when we go to the next tier, or they're going to remove that information and not dumb down bosses enough, and now we're going to feel like we can't do anything about it because we can't have anything else help us. The other scenario is they allow us to have the same customizability that we have now. And that is going to be the absolute king of what we need here, because you've seen it on Liquid's stream. Liquid has an in-house customly made cooldown reminder that they can use. You see Fired Up use it all the time. Like, he finds specific minutes in the fight, puts like a text to speech or something that pops up on his screen on the cooldown reminder, and it will do that at the same point of the fight every single time. If that functionality goes away and they don't have a replacement, that's a degradation in functionality that we currently have, and that's going to be annoying for people.
Yeah.
If you can't pick what you're tracking in a fight, that's going to be annoying, because as a DPS, you don't care about the tank and healer abilities.
Yeah.
Like, you just flat out don't. You don't need to know about them. But if you're a DPS who's a raid lead, now you do. And so, like, they need to either allow you to hide the things that you don't want to see, or turn on things that are hidden for you by default, because if they don't, you're going to be gimping somebody in some way. So all of this is going to come back around to the thing of customizability and kind of how we interact with that. And the problem is when people hear boss mods, they immediately think DBM and they immediately think bigwigs, but they don't think about the weak auras that help them. They don't think about cooldown reminders. They don't think about method raid tools even, and just having like notes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot that is going to have to go into this, that is going to have to be there before I would say this is even functionally ready.
I agree. I think the thing for me personally is I am an auditory guy. I don't do well with like I have the time, like I have bigwigs timers for abilities on my bar and getting reminders when ability is coming up, like and like getting to see, oh, it's 30 seconds from this. I have that and I look at it, but the best way for me to be conveyed information is through some sort of auditory reminder, that whether it's just a text to speech of reading the name of the ability and I hear that and know, oh, that ability is being cast, I know how to react to it, or if it's customizable sounds that, you know, this sound means this sound means that. That is how I play the game. And if you take out a boss mod and put in a Blizzard version and don't have that level of like auditory customization on there, that's going to be a big problem for me. So yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of what we talked about at the beginning, right? This is the tough part of this, right? Is that the things that we use today are the things that have been iterated on again and again and again over time. And if it was bad, it didn't it people didn't download it, and so it didn't get
Yep.
used. And if it's good, it gets downloaded a lot and becomes the thing everyone knows about. And yeah, when you pull all that in house, all of that goes away, and you're just relying on Blizzard to make the correct decision at all times for all of these things. And that makes me a little nervous. Like it is this kind of catch-22 situation though, because like I don't think it's good for the game that to play the game you have to go download a shit ton of add-ons. We've talked about how you and I would probably test more on beta and on PTR if we could very easily get our UI functioning on beta and on PTR. And so yeah, I see like the dream future version of this where my UI is just a customized version of the base UI, and I could easily just like export and import things from one version of the game to the other, and bam, it works, and I can play. And like I love that idea. I love it. I think it's great that you can just boot up the game. I think it's great that like it's like, oh shit, my hard drive crashed. It's going to take me 3 hours to get WoW configured, and I have to figure this out before the raid tonight. Like I would love if all that would go away. On the other hand, I am a little skittish about losing a little bit of my freedom and choice on what I want to use and what I don't. And I mean, I don't know. The vibe I got from the interview was that they're fully aware of that, and that they're going to be very careful and deliberate as they roll these things out. So that was slightly comforting. On the other hand, I look at things like the starter builds. This is actually a great example of like Wowhead versus Blizzard. The starter builds are very often not good. And they are not updated frequently. And like I think it was like season 4 of Dragonflight or season 3 of Dragonflight where like Automatic Jack said I need content, like the season's getting old and I need content. So he made a Resto Druid, and he said, I'm gonna take the Resto Druid starter build to Keystone Hero or something. And it was a excruciating experience for him because the Resto Druid starter build did not interface with the tier set at all. At all. It was just not like you didn't take Grove Guardians, and the whole tier set was built around the Grove Guardians that season. And that's the kind of thing that makes me nervous when I think about like how like those starter builds are non-functional in some cases. And like and yet he still did get Keystone Hero with it. So like, man, I don't like, I'm so up in the air about all this. Like,
it's going to be something that we're just going to have to see how it all pans out. And again, you're going to have to take it with a grain of salt because the first iteration that they release is going to be the worst iteration, and it's going to get better.
Yep.
But I have played games in which they have kind of baked in boss mods, and it's nice. Like, it is nice to know that they are developing within constraints that they know that they can develop within.
Yeah.
And they're not having to do what you were saying earlier with the arms race against weak aura developers or anything like that. So like in that sense, I think it's good. And I think it's good to remove the barriers to entry to play the game. And there's a lot of good things about this, and I want to be optimistic about it. I want Blizzard to know that they need to allow customization, because you are going to really, really, really piss off raid leaders if you do not allow any sort of customization when it comes to this boss mod stuff.
For sure. Yeah. So, I agree.
I don't know if there's any other like main add-on stuff that you want to talk about, Scott, but the thing is like we made the joke earlier, and it's probably true that eventually add-ons are going to be replaced by the Blizzard in-house stuff, but like don't get all up in arms about it yet. Ian has been very clear that they have no current intentions of removing any of the add-ons that we all know and love right now.
Yeah.
So don't freak out yet. And if Ian's not saying it, then it's probably not in the cards for any time soon because let's be honest, WoW gets developed like 4 years in advance from what we actually see. So I think we are going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like the one very positive outcome of this whole thing was that they seem to fully understand this is a massive change. It's something that needs to be taken slowly with lots of consideration, and they are not taking any of the shifts lightly. I think they understand that add-ons and these combat add-ons have become a core part of the game for so many people, and they're not going to just make a change willy-nilly. I mean, like, if you had to guess, and this is complete supposition, but if you had to guess, like, what is the timeline for stuff like this? Do you think, like when do we have a in-game, like, native in-game boss mod
that has removed the ability to do other boss mods, or just their first iteration?
I mean, their first, I guess. Okay, let me rephrase the question. Like, when do they turn off the API stuff? Like, at what point do you think they do that? Like, how far into the future do you think we're talking?
I personally don't think that we would see that until like the end of midnight. Like, I don't think that they have the development power to continue giving us content while also keeping up with everything that they're going to need to do to develop these add-ons in any scenario at which we completely get rid of our current add-ons. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly naive about that, and Blizzard has made snap decisions like that on short notice for us before. So I could see it, but personally, if I want to be conservative, I'm saying like the end of midnight is probably optimistic.
Yeah.
On when they would remove add-ons.
I think I agree with that. I think we're years away from this for sure. This is just like the first of many conversations that are going to be had over the next several years. So yeah.
I could see, however, for season 4, they roll out their first implementation of this stuff, like their first implementation of a boss mod or something. Like, I could see that coming in the very near future.
Mm-hmm. So I do want. I don't know this for facts. I don't think there's going to be a season 4. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah, I think, and we haven't talked about any of the 11.1.7 stuff yet, but I think we kind of know when season 3 is coming because of all that stuff. I think we're looking at early August for season 3, which means season 2 is not even half over yet.
Correct. Which kind of brings us to our next topic, and that I want to talk about for whatever time we have remaining here. And we can pick this back up at any point, but late season interactions in this game, Scott. There's a few things to touch on here. Like, we need to talk about the types of players, and we need to talk about things that typically happen. So I think that when you get into late season, you get the more hardcore WoW players who play this game not necessarily for any specific one-off achievement over anything else, except for maybe like CE players or people going for title. But you get the people who are playing this game more so just to continue to play the game because they enjoy the gameplay loop at which it provides.
Yeah.
But the problem that you run into and things that typically happen in late season, I think the biggest one people start to realize is the tank and healer shortages become significantly worse. Like, way worse.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's true. We saw that a little bit the other day.
I think,
and we're not even halfway through the season yet.
I think the other thing that gets way worse is lower end and higher end content starts to really dwindle.
Yeah,
meaning that the number of +2 keys that are going to be listed and the number of like +17 keys or higher that are going to be listed is going to be in the magnitude of like less than 10 potentially at any given moment, which is absolutely wild for the player base at which will probably continue to play the game. I mean, we're talking on the magnitude of hundreds of thousands of people still playing the game. Having 10 keys in a specific key level bracket is insane. Like, absolute insanity.
Yeah, it's weird because like on the one hand, I don't think it's bad that this has become a very seasonal game for so many people that like the new season comes out, you do you do the raid, you clear the raid, you do Mythic Plus for a while, you get maybe your goal is to get all tens, whatever. You gear yourself up as much as you can, then you're like, oh, I'm good, I'm done. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I do think it creates this very interesting culture that exists in this game in the doldrums of the season.
It makes it very hard for guild leaders. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. It's near impossible. I don't know how people keep guilds together in between seasons. I just don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how people like if you are not progging. Like I understand if there's like a CE guild that like spends literally the entire patch cycle progging and gets CE in the last month or even last week. Like I get that. You're it's constant progression. You're constantly working towards something. I get that. But yeah, if you're like an AOTC guild, um, and you clear it relatively quickly in the life cycle, it's like, how do you keep people coming back to farm for 6 months or
Yeah.
5 months?
The answer is, I think ultimately you don't.
You
I
don't.
mean, people are going to peter out and they're going to go do something else and they're going to come back in the new season, just kind of expect there to be a guild there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not how it works out a lot of the
It
time.
is not. Yeah.
So,
This
I don't
is
know.
why, by the way, I have a lot of problems with the systems that like for example, we complained about the renowned track last week, and it's like 20 tracks requiring 20 weeks of raiding the raid every week. Feels like a lot for me.
hmm so I guess the main question that we need to answer here, Scott, is like, how do you stay interested in the game in the late season? And you and I have played into late seasons many times together, but there have also been seasons in where you and I have not played into late seasons
Yeah.
together. Like I have stopped playing or something like that. So I guess I'll give my take on how I attempt to stay interested into the late season, and then I'll pass it over to you because I think you might have better insights in that than I do.
I don't know if better,
So
but sure.
I typically try to get one character into a position at which I would safely call it my main and my best character, and then I will start working on alts. And that is how I like to keep myself engaged with the game. And Scott said this earlier, but like figuring out new classes and figuring out new specs really has allowed me to continue to push through and do those things without the annoyance of, okay, well, I've done this before. This is boring. I'm ready to be done. Um, and that kind of goes doubly in hand with the fact, like, if you have 5 people and you can do Mythic Plus, like the season feels like it has just become infinitely less of a chore because you guys have set times to play and you all want to do the same thing and you are achieving something, whether it be slowly or not. I mean, it's the same thing as a CE guild continuing to play throughout the entire expansion as long as they are still progressing. So
Mhm.
I think those are the two biggest ways that I have found myself to be able to continue. I know the alt example isn't for everybody. Not everybody likes playing multiple characters. Not everybody likes playing anything but one class. And I think that's fine. But I don't really have a solution for those people. So that's how I keep myself interested. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a little advantage on you here in that I don't get to play the game as much, so it just takes me generally longer to get bored. Because like I have a very limited amount of time to play. And so my enjoyment tends to just naturally last longer, especially this season when I took that whole month off, that unplanned month off. Yeah, I mean, I like the gearing up and growing in power treadmill is something I generally enjoy. I like incremental progress and watching number go up and not just watching item level number go up, but like watching your character progress through Mythic Plus dungeons where, yes, last week I could do a +5. Now I'm doing +8, +10. Like, and I like that progress and that process. And that's why I like alts, is because I like getting to do that again. Like there's definitely a once you're getting up to like the high keys, there's definitely like an added mental load of like, okay, I'm tired. It's the end of the day. I could log on and like try to pug a 13 or 14, or I could just hop on an alt and do a 5 and
Yeah.
just chill. And some days that's what I want to do. And so having like a suite of alts that I can like constantly be working on that treadmill is something I find really fun. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't like, I'm not a DPS player, so I don't find like the rotation complexity part of it fun, but I do like, for like, the reason why I want to do the all the healers to 3K thing is because I do find it very fun doing the same dungeon on different healers and like getting to see the places when, oh, like I thought this boss was easy, and it turns out it was easy just because I was a Mistweaver, and this boss is actually very, very hard on a different healer, and vice
Mhm.
versa, right? Like there's all the rot fights, like the Candle King and the swamp dude in Floodgate are like difficult for me on my monk, but like very easy for me on my druid.
Yep.
Like I walked into a 10 Dark Flame Cleft with like no gear on my druid and like easily healed the Candle King fight, because it's just like rot fights are just like druid's specialty, and it's just like, man, this is easy. And like that is fun for me to experience those differences between the classes and their utility and their healing profile, and how that healing profile plays out in those keys as you learn it. That's really fun for me. And so it's also like setting goals for yourself. If you're that type of person, keeps you interested too. It's like, um I want to do this and I want to accomplish this season. And there's going to be some weeks I'm not feeling it as much, and maybe I won't play as much that week, but like still having that goal in the back of your head, I think is very helpful. So
I I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Like that setting goals for yourself and trying to achieve as many of those in a season as possible is always going to keep you more engaged. And I think that, ironically enough, people who have grown up with a childhood of playing games that are less structured around the game telling you what you need to do and you needed to set goals for yourself have an advantage here.
yeah.
People who grew up playing RuneScape, for example, the game doesn't set any goals for you. You set the goals for yourself and you achieve them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing in like base level like Minecraft. It's the same thing in a lot of old RPGs,
Yeah.
in which like you have to achieve a level to do something, but it isn't necessarily the game saying you have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, in EverQuest, you've told me about it before, like there were things that you could strive for that were not required. And so setting a goal for yourself to take a step towards that is something that people had to do back in
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, nothing in EverQuest was required. You could, it's just
yeah,
like you
exactly.
there's no, like, it is so hilarious how we've kind of optimized the fuck out of these type of games, where like the
Mhm.
idea that there are required things, and it's very funny to me. It's just like that. And like, I obviously I like it. I'm not saying I don't like it, but it's just such a different world. like,
Yeah.
like nobody, like we were talking about like optimization in damage rotations, and how like in beta there's like thousands of data miners and parsers that are finding the exact optimization of when should I press this and when should I do this, and it's like, I don't have any of that shit in EverQuest. It's like, I don't know, I felt like I did more damage this time than last time. I don't know. You just kind of tinkered yourself and tried it out and see how you do. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a whole different world. But yeah, I mean, and I like, I think that the combination in my mind of having goals and then not being afraid to take breaks when you need it. Like, I am looking at this game Blueprints right now. That is very highly reviewed and very strongly recommended to me by just about everyone. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll take a little time off from playing this game and just play that game. And then, the thing happens is when you return to it, like the boredom and the maybe the exhaustion with the gameplay loop has kind of abated a little bit. And it's like, no, this is fun to me again. I haven't ran a key in a week. And so here's the experience of doing a key is a lot more fun than it was 2 weeks ago when I ran when I got filled vaults on 4 characters or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap everything up, Scott, I don't really have much else to say about late season stuff. If you are something, or if you are somebody who wants to continue to play into the late season, the best thing that I can tell you to do is one, set goals for yourself. Two, don't be scared to mess around on alts. And three, and probably the most like impactful thing that will keep you interested in this game is find a group of people who are also intending to play into the late season.
Yeah.
And I think that you will see that the mental fatigue of like feeling like you have to log on will be extremely lessened because you'll have people to do content with.
Yeah. And man, like, I cannot undersell like how important having people to play this game with is. Like, we don't always have it, and the times when I've gotten closest to quitting and being bored and burned out are the times when I was just playing by myself. And it's like even a shitty night where you don't get anything accomplished, where you fail every key you do, if you're doing it with 4 of your buddies, it's awesome. This game is truly meant to be played with other people. Like, I understand there's a lot of people out there that only pug because they don't know enough people, or their times are weird and complicated. I get that more than anyone. My times are weird and complicated. Finding like a group of people that Mythic Plus or God forbid raid at the times I can play is like next to impossible. But like the game is so much more fun when you're on call with 5 other people or 4 other people shooting the shit and having fun and playing. Like you cannot, I cannot undersell how much more fun it is. So yeah, find people, try, be social. There's a lot of, we're all kind of awkward dorks, but we all want friends. So talk to the people.
Don't take shit so seriously.
Oh yeah,
too, is another thing that I
Who
can
cares
say.
if you fuck up? Who cares if you fuck up? Who cares if someone gets mad at you? It doesn't matter. It's a game. Who cares
if a key depletes?
It doesn't just matter.
Move on. It's just a key.
Yeah.
You'll do it again.
Yep.
It's fine.
Probably fuck it up again too. It happens.
Well, I think that's really all I had for the show today, Scott. So the main question that I have for you guys is kind of bringing it back to the main topic that we talked about for well over an hour in today's show is what are some of the add-ons you think should be brought into a Blizzard in-house integrated kind of base game sense that haven't been raised, and why? Maybe it's something that's going to be super simple for them to add and you feel like would just be one thing that they could easily knock out and remove a barrier to entry for somebody. Or maybe it's something that is extremely complicated, but nobody's talking about. So let me know what you think and why. And as always, you can contact us over at Yelling Into the Void wow@gmail.com. YouTube is at Yelling Into the Void wow, and Twitter and Blue Sky are at Into the Void wow.
And if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so. Make sure you will never miss a single solitary episode. Next week, the Turbo Boost begins. You like that, Tevin? I got the name right? It's a turbo. It's a Turbo Boost. Wait, is it? Did I say a factual statement or was I wrong there? I'm pretty sure it's the 13th.
I think it is the 13th. I think you're right.
So the Turbo Boost begins, and we're going to turbo boost it. We're going to be talking.
We are stockpiling crests to turbo boost our way into the Turbo Boost.
Oh my god! How about that new change that the crafted gear requires 30 crests now?
We can talk about it next week because that's essentially just reverting a change that they have already made this season. So
it is.
I think it's pretty funny.
It's very fun. It's very funny. It's very funny. Yeah, stockpile your crests. You're gonna need them.
So the other thing too, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting on YouTube. All of that helps us get more exposure and introduces us to new people. It allows us to continue doing what we do here and allows us to really interact with you guys. So until next week though, guys, I think Scott and I will just be over here yelling into the one button void.